good, traders? Hope you're all doing well. Once again, we're going to have a look at the Forex weekly liquidity outlook and setups. We're going to have a look at some of the probable draws on liquidity on terms of the daily and weekly. Where can we expect price to most likely trade to next? Once again, we'll be looking at previous highs and lows, and we'll be looking at imbalances because we know the price is most likely to trade to one of these, either a high or low, or a previous imbalance, or just move sideways when there's no clear, obvious draw on liquidity. So remember last week we mentioned, if you haven't checked it out, check the previous video. I mentioned we could potentially trade towards the downside as we have no imbalance towards the upside, and we have some down here. Actually, I was looking, I think, at this low as well as a possible draw on liquidity. So we can see that we spent the entire week just trading up into the previous candle's range. We didn't really trade above the high, and we didn't really trade below the low. We kind of just ticked it, just tapped it, and then traded towards the upside. So last week we had a up closing day, as you can see. What's next for this week? I would like to just take note of where we have the previous weekly high over there, and then obviously we have this previous weekly low right over there. So in terms of the weekly, those are two significant levels that we can look at. We're not going to be focusing too much on other price action, we'll just be focusing on those two levels. Now we know that most likely, why doesn't this want to snap? Most likely, price will either trade towards the upside or towards the downside and break one of these areas. So that is a significant thing for us, because we can then know that there's one of two ways price can go. Well, that's obvious. Obviously, price can go either towards the upside or the downside. But now we can also keep in mind some other things, some other elements of price action. If we look at the weekly, we're currently reacting off of this zone. So if we look at price action, we've reacted off of this demand or order block, and we're seeing the bearish push towards the downside. So logically, I do think that we could potentially see a continuation further lower because of this reaction. So that would lead me to believe that we could trade below this area. But now we also have to keep in mind that we could see a pullback happening, or prices may be reacting off of something on the lower time frames, and this is a reaction, and then we trade higher. So you would notice that there's a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes. So if that is the case, then obviously we need more information. Let's look at the daily. And I think that's what's happening on daily. As we can see, we are reacting off of this zone over here, and we complex corrective price action. So there's no clear, clean bias in this for me personally. Yes, we have last week's high, last week's low, but in between that, it's just consolidation. So we've reacted. I kind of looked at this little area of imbalance. You can see that we had some body closes in it, not above it, so that's a good sign for bearish price action. So also note liquidity below those lows, potentially price could reach for that. So maybe something like this, or we could just see a further continuation up higher like this as well. So again, a few options. So nothing that gets me excited knowing, yes, that is the bias. So unfortunately, I can't with 100% certainty say what I believe the bias is going to be, because I don't know yet. Well, we have this liquidity low, and then we can just mark out this one as well. So because of my style of trading and my approach, it's very quick intraday in and out type of trading. I prefer just focusing on the first 3 hours of London session and looking for certain things, levels, highs and lows in that session. So I'm not that concerned about what the high time frame is doing. I just want to see what happens on the lower time frames within that period. Obviously, I want to have a clearer understanding of what the high time frame is doing, because that will solidify my trade idea But nonetheless, I often look for price action to give me indication on the higher time frames. If the daily is confusing, then I drop to the 4-hour and I try to make sense of the 4-hour. And this is what I shared with the community as well. I told them that we were reacting off of this imbalance, and then that imbalance created a level of demand, and then we had a reaction off of that demand. So that's one of the entry patterns that we trade. And I told them I'm looking for longs and my bias is long. So that's why we took longs, and I shared in the community long trade is because on the 4-hour we can see different more imbalances that price could be trading to. So the bias on the 4-hour for me is bullish. When a bullish trend, let's say a trend, we're breaking structure, going up, making a pullback, making higher highs. If we just make a note of that, we're making higher lows and higher highs. So this for me is bullish. So I'd be going into the week with a bullish sentiment starting off until we see some conviction, some strong displacement candles towards the downside, indicating that we're continuing our trend towards the downside. Yes, if we look at it like this, then it's still bearish. So we're open for that bearish idea, but as you can see, there's nothing solid where price is reacting off of. There's no strong block, strong zone in here. So that kind of leads me to believe that price is going to take this high. So for that reason, that would be my new buy side liquidity objective, and we're going to call that buy side liquidity. I'm just going to make it like that. So that is then my new objective. I'm going to just put a little eye because I have my eye on that area for price to trade to next, primarily because, let me explain, there's not a strong zone in here that price is reacting off of, and the reaction failed to break structure. Those are the two reasons why I do believe that price is going to go higher. Creating higher highs, failed to make lower low, a weak high then, in essence that is then a weak high. So that is then kind of the view that I have for EU short term. So Monday morning, Monday, Tuesday, I'll be looking for this area to be reached. That is then for EU. Let's have a quick look at GU as well. GU was a bit more confusing as of late, because look at this consolidation on the 4-hour. Just messy price action. Some would probably say it's some sort of channel. Whatever the case may be, let's start off on the weekly. Okay, so let's just look and see what price has done. Okay, we've traded up into this imbalance. We rejected off of it, traded lower. What do we have towards the downside in terms of imbalance or fair value gaps? We have this spot over here. So there's our two areas of imbalance. So where are best price reacting off of in terms of order blocks, supply and demand? We have this area. Price is just not reacting off of it, but it is reacting off of the imbalance right over there. And we're seeing price bearish displacement towards the downside, pull back into the fair value gap, and then just consolidating. So currently price is ranging. Where do we have liquidity? We have sell side liquidity below the lows. We have buy side liquidity above that highs. One scenario, first right off the bat, price takes out the buy side liquidity and then trades lower towards the downside. That's my first go-to when I'm looking at price. Seeing can price take out buy side liquidity before reaching then for sell side liquidity, which we then have right there as well. So that is then another thing on the weekly. Let's have a quick look at the daily. This is now where the daily gets confusing and messy, is because the daily is just consolidating. It's moving sideways. It's not big ranges, and we can still see the price is moving lower, creating that lower lows, and then we see this price action. It's just moving sideways. We failed to make a higher high, failed to make a lower low. We're trading still within this range. So what we now can do potentially, so we know we have that objective, so we could potentially plot a premium and discount range and say that, okay, look, we're at equilibrium, we're at 50%. We need to make a move towards the upside, sweep buy side, then trade lower, or trade lower, sweep sell side, and then trade up above towards the upside. So there's a few things that still need to fall in place before we can find a good setup. So I'm not going to jump too much deeper into GU. EU looks a bit cleaner and clearer, but use the same knowledge or same approach that we used on EU and apply it to GU. We have clear buy side liquidity above these highs, so we can just plot that. I definitely think the price could be reaching for that area, and we can see the bullishness. If we turn bullish, take out the buy side liquidity, tap into this imbalance again, and then potentially trade lower, because this sell side liquidity is super juicy as well. And that is what I'm going to leave you with for today. Guys, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and then I'll see you in the next one. Bye.